It all counts, family. It's great to see you guys again. We have a special guest today, a renowned professor, a phenomenal man, great teacher and leader, Dr. Leonard Moore. How you doing?
Doing good, brother. Thanks for having me.
How's life treating you?
Man, I tell people, man, if you want to go back in time, just come to the state of Texas, bro.
Hey, Doc, how was it growing up in Cleveland, Ohio?
Man, it was great, man. I think Cleveland's a great city, kind of like St. Louis, Detroit, Chicago, a little smaller. But, large black middle class, had some of everything in Cleveland, and I tell people, man, Cleveland, it's a good place we say it's a good place to be from. Those of us who grew up there really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed my time there in my ninth grade year, at least a semester at John Hay High School. It was a great experience for me. I enjoyed it. Doc, how are your children doing?
We're doing good, man. I got a daughter at University of North Texas playing basketball in grad school, another daughter at Jackson State. She's a sophomore. Then I got a son who's a high school senior, and he'll be going to Notre Dame to play a little football, man. So we've been blessed, man. We've been tremendously blessed, man. It's funny, bro. People always want to read your bio. You get this, people want to read your bio, but I tell people what I'm most proud of is being a husband and a father, and, been a husband 21 and a half consecutive years, no breaks.
I like that, Doc. I like that, Doc.
No breaks.
And Doc, you're a renowned professor in Black history teaching and a lot of wonderful things, but got a degree from Jackson State University. Then you got a PhD from Ohio State University. But I read that you graduated high school with a 1.6.
1.6, yeah. And I wasn't no street dude. I'm a middle class black kid. You know what I mean? From like a suburb like Ferguson. That's what Cleveland Heights was, all right? And so for me, man, just wasn't engaged in school. The teachers were boring. But man, my 12th grade year, man, I took a couple Black history classes. A white teacher who looked like Stephen King, all right? And Martin, that white brother turned me on to Black history, and it's been on and popping ever since. I knew that I wanted to be a history major. I didn't know if I was going to teach high school, middle school, community college. Ended up getting a PhD at 26, man, and I've had 2 jobs my whole life. I taught at LSU for 9 years, and I've been at the University of Texas for the last 17.
Now, so white history teacher in high school, then you LSU and Texas, 2 phenomenal institutions, but in the South.
Yeah.
How was that transition?
Yes. Love it. I mean, if you come to my class now at the University of Texas, Coach, and I'm gonna bring you at some point, there's gonna be 530 students in the class. Wow. More than 300 of them are white.
That's beautiful.
They want the history. And what I remind some of these kids that if they went K through 12 without having a black teacher, without taking a Black history class, they've been miseducated. And I tell them, y'all aren't ready to hit the marketplace if you have never been around people with other perspectives. You know what I mean? And so for me, man, I don't come at it from a social justice point of view. I come at it, our job at the university is to prepare you to go anywhere in the world, do impactful work, and you can't do it if you ain't been around, if you know nothing about the Black experience.
Yes. And Doc, that sounds like Dr. Harry Edwards, one of East St. Louis greats, and he's a phenomenal man out of Cal Berkeley, did wonderful things. You got over 500 plus students. Yeah. What percentage of athletes do you have in there?
I used to have a lot of them, but so Coach,
wow.
Coach, what happens when the student athletes protested in the summer 2020? Okay, football players. My thing is, I support students' right to free speech. I'm gonna support that, and I'm not gonna allow 18 and 19, 20-year-old Black men to be out there by themselves. Yeah. You know what I mean? So if I'm going to stand with them, stand in front of them. So if somebody's going to take the bullets, I'm willing to take them. So I think what happened, and I've been here 17 years, bro. Now I think what happened was word got out, well, Dr. Moore is kind of radical, blah, blah, blah. But here's the funny thing, Coach. I've been here 17 years, been around white conservatives, white Trump supporters, ain't never had a problem. My problem happened when a bunch of white liberals got on campus. And that's a totally different discussion. Yeah.
Wow.
Because see, man, white guys in Texas are straight up. I went and spoke at this event. This elite men's club invited me to speak, and it was called the Lakeway Men's Club. And when I said that, Coach, the Lakeway Men's Club, the image that went in your mind, that's them. All right? About 100 dudes, 100 guys, all business owners. And so, man, even before I got up to speak, 6 people walked out. And I can respect that. And so I told my grad student, I took a couple of my grad students with me, some brothers. I said, hey, man, I'm not going to say nothing about race. I'm going to just talk about taking students to like Dubai, South Africa, and China like I've done. I didn't say nothing about race. Coach, when I finished speaking, older cat raised his hand. He said, Dr. Moore, can I ask you about Black Lives Matter? And I said, well, I didn't come to talk about Black Lives Matter. I said, but brother, I know you've been waiting 3 years to ask somebody this question. So today is your lucky day. He says, well, it's more of a statement. He says, if you all would obey the police, you wouldn't get shot.
Wow.
Now, Coach, I'm not offended by that. That's his perspective. And that's why I like being in the South. Because here's the thing, Coach. When he comes at me like that, now it's on and popping.
Yes.
I asked him, I said, can I ask you a series of questions? He said, yeah. I said, do you believe there are bad football coaches? Yes. Do you believe there are bad business owners? Yes. Are there bad investment bankers? Yes. Well, how come there can't be bad cops?
That's true. That's true.
And what he said was, he said, Dr. Moore, I never looked at it that way. So I appreciate when they come hardcore because now, man, we can have a conversation and we can peel back the layers.
I like that. Now, Doc, I have to admit something, man, and whether it's naive or just not knowing, when I went to college, when I was at Purdue University, I didn't feel like it was important to take an African-American or African history class because I felt like I was already Black. And it just, one of my teammates, he ended up getting a degree in African-American history and he's doing great things. But I just felt like, and not that I downgrade, I just didn't feel like there was a need for it. What, boy, was I naive.
Let's look at strictly in economic terms. Economists will tell you that if you look at the Black gross domestic product, the goods and services we buy and all that, the money we make, we'd be the 12th or 13th richest country in the world, just Black people. But here's the thing, Coach. Every other industry studies us and how we spend our money. Nike owes Black folks so much. We built that company.
Yes, yes.
I mean, you think about law enforcement, the prison system, these companies, these hair companies. Brother, we spend tons of money. And here's the thing, Coach. Everybody else studies us but us. Everybody else studies us, but we don't think we are worthy of academic study. No, we are. Yeah. But other people are jumping on it. Now, they're not going to say they majoring in it and they don't tell nobody, but you best believe, Coach, these people spend big money doing all kind of research on our buying power because one of the things about integration, it was more an integration of the dollar than anything else. They recognized there was a whole lot of money sitting in those segregated communities in the South.
Doc, how do you handle it when a student athlete, they say young Black men or young Black woman come to you and they having issues and they struggling? How do you deal with that?
Well, first of all, I speak to their humanity, first of all. You know what I mean? I speak to their humanity. I rarely ask them anything about how they're doing on the field or the court, because I can read the news for that, right? And to me, it's how you doing, how your folks doing. And here is why Black professors are so important at the major universities. They see former athletes all the time. But I think when you got a professor like me, somebody who's not in their world, taking an interest in them, all right? And telling the brother football team, man, you one of the smartest guys on campus because you know that whole playbook and you know them plays, you know all that technical stuff, and you do it in a split-second time in front of 100,000 people watching at the stadium and in front of 10 or 11 million watching on TV. So, brother, I know you smart. I just got to show you how to transfer that intelligence from the football field to the classroom. And man, I've done it for 27 years. When Jamarcus Russell was at LSU and all them guys, I used to go snatch brothers out of the bed, Coach. I was just that passionate. And when I got to Texas in 2007, I was that passionate. But here's the thing. When you are surrounded by other people who just exploit them, they begin to wonder what your motives are. And I've told people for 27 years, my motive is graduation. I don't need no tickets. I don't need to get on a private jet. I don't need no gear. And so, man, that's what I've run into. You know, I don't want nothing from them. Because here's what I told the athletic director. I said, I'm so passionate because when that sister playing basketball here, when she is done, and when that brother's done, they coming back to our communities broken. So let's take this. Imagine you got a sister who plays point guard at Alabama or LSU. She been the center of attention since the 6th grade. She go to Alabama on a private jet, all the gear, right? Staying in the nicest hotels, playing in the best arenas, get the best medical care, trainers, nutritionists, anything she want, coach.
Yes.
And now when March hits and they lose that tournament game and she's done, ain't nobody around to help her no more. And she comes back to the Black community broken. The identity is broken, and now we got to build her back up.
Doc, I read your book, and I'll touch on it, but Teaching Black History to White People. Okay. Now, but what I want to say is, when I read it, your first week of school, I think you said your second day, you show graphic images of Black people being lynched and murdered. Why you do that?
I grew up in a community, coach, where that was about 20% Orthodox Jewish. So some of my Jewish friends wore yarmulkes. We be playing shirts and skins basketball. They got yarmulkes on, hooping and playing tackle football. When you grow up in a community like that, those Jewish folks, they never hid the Holocaust from anything. They wanted people to see it.
Okay.
And they said, no matter how graphic it is, we gonna show it because people are trying to deny it existed, and that's why, no, we gonna show it every time we get. And so some people call it trauma porn. I'm like, no, we gotta show that because people need to understand that's a part of American history.
Yes. That's
yes,
really
sir.
Yeah. Now, I'm sitting in your classroom now as a student and I see this. And as a Black guy, I'm sitting there, I'm halfway angry. Then as a white student, I'm sitting there like I'm somewhat in fear or like, why are you showing this? I'm walking out of the classroom. How do you handle those dynamics?
Well, Marcus Garvey said this. He said that Black history should inspire Black folks, that it should serve as an inspiration. So I tell Black folks, when you see it, it should inspire you. And he said, when you're teaching Black history to the white community, it needs to show them how we have been treated. And I tell people all the time, we as Black folk don't complain enough.
I believe that.
And so this summer, man, me and my wife were in New York City for several months, and I went to the whole Statue of Liberty Ellis Island tour. You know what I reminded people, man, is that we have been here since 1607. 90% of our white brothers and sisters didn't come here till after 1890. So more than anybody else, we got a right to be here. It's our blood that's in the brick and mortar of this country. But what has happened, immigrants have come, Europe, Asia, parts of Africa, right? And they look down upon us. And it's like, no, we were here long before you came. And so for me, man, so it's supposed to inspire and motivate, but on the one hand, say, hey, this is how Black folk have been treated throughout history.
And Doc, you've heard it time and time again. You've probably spoke on it, but reparations, what are your thoughts on that?
Here's what I say. And people say, well, Dr. Moore, man, if you go show me somebody a slave, we'll give him some money. We ain't got to go back that far. I tell people, let's go to Jim Crow and segregation. These were American citizens, people paying taxes, didn't have access to resources. Couldn't go to LSU, couldn't go to Texas, couldn't go to A&M, but they were paying taxes, right? And we have all the documentation. And so, Coach, what I do, I give this monopoly example in my class. And when I'm talking to white audiences, and this is what helps most people get it. I say, let's say we sit down and play a game of Monopoly, me and my 6 white friends, okay? And they say, okay, Leonard, man, you got to understand the rules of the game are different for you. I'm like, what are the rules? Leonard, you can't buy any property until you roll for the 20th time. And I'm like, that ain't in the rule book. They're like, yes, it is. So despite the deck being stacked against me, Coach, I'm going to play the game. I'm going to roll 15, no property and no money. Now, I got the dice in my hand for the 20th time, Coach. Now I'm eligible to buy property. But what has happened to all the property in the game?
It's all bought
It's
up.
been bought.
Yeah.
So then I'm still broke, Coach. I ain't got no money, no property. One of my neighbors says, let's go to dinner and let's keep the game going, but let's have our kids come downstairs and let's give our kids our money and our property so they can keep the game going. They come downstairs, people get property and money. My daughter, Lauren, come downstairs, no property and no money. Her friends say, Lauren, where's your property and money? She say, well, I don't have none because y'all discriminated against my daddy. They say, Lauren, that happened a long time ago. You can't blame us. When in the South, Coach, Black folks couldn't vote from roughly 1890 to 1968, an 80-year period where we could not compete in the economic mainstream. We will never catch up.
Doc, let me give you a round of applause, man. I mean, I got to gather myself. But you hit me in the chest with that now. Doc, Doc, that's powerful. Doc, again, I think we're at a crossroads because affirmative action is gone. So where do we go now?
Yes, sir. Well, I tell people, Tom Brokaw about 10, 15 years ago came up with something called the greatest generation. And he said the greatest generation was the World War II generation. I disagree. The greatest generation in my mind, Coach, was those 4 million enslaved Black folks who went from slavery to freedom just like that, 1865. They ain't got no consulting firm. They ain't got no roadmap. But within 10 years, Coach, these people moved off the plantation. They rebuilt their families. They changed their names. They acquired property. They established churches. They built schools. They established universities. And they built an entire Black business infrastructure such that by 1875, you got Black folks being prosperous. And remember, 1864, when General Sherman meets with a group of enslaved folks in Georgia, 1864, he says, what do y'all want when the war is over? And this was the blueprint of Black America. They said, we want two things. Number one, we want some property. And number two, we want you to leave us alone. The people were so successful and innovative and entrepreneurial, Coach. That's when white Southerners come up with something nobody had ever seen before, but it was so effective that Nazi Germany used it and the apartheid government in South Africa used it. It was called segregation. Segregation is a direct response to Black folks prospering after the Civil War. Because white Southerners believed we would die out because we didn't know how to take care of ourselves. The old folks said, brother, we've been taking care of y'all for 250 years. We know how to take care of ourselves. So that blueprint, property and get out of my way, that's what we've always been about. Entrepreneurial, innovative, industrious, all of that. But whenever we have prospered on our own, there has always been something to come in the way and to kill that prosperity.
So now, Doc, what do you say to a family, young men are struggling to find their ways? Man, I'm just tired of fighting, man, because every time we get up, we get knocked back down. What do you say to somebody borderline quitting and ready to give up?
And particularly with brothers, man, you know, when a brother says F it, you know he's done.
Yes.
Here's what I tell people, and I tell a lot of Black parents this. The HBCU saved me, man. I had great parents, but I needed to go to Jackson State. I needed to see Black professors and Black administrators and Black buildings with Black folks' name. I needed to see all that. And I tell people that the two institutions that have sustained us, Coach, the Black church and the HBCU, those things have sustained, even in all our issues, that right there are the institutions that have sustained us. We got to help our pastors do a better job of connecting with Black men and begin to structure a worship service that is appealing to men.
Amen.
Right? But I tell every parent this, and you get these conversations about affirmative action, that right? We can beg to go to Michigan and Texas and UCLA. But you know what? Jackson State may be better than Johns Hopkins. Howard may be better than Harvard. And Prairie View may be better than Princeton. And we got institutions and I know y'all saying this dude work at Texas, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but we got institutions that are built for us and by us.
Yes.
And I think we have neglected.
Doc, how did your teaching, if it changed, I want to be respectful there, after George Floyd, when you walked in the classroom that next day and that next week?
The thing about my class, Coach, is that, you know, it tends to become the epicenter of the campus when these incidents happen, right? And what I typically do on those days, I just pull up a chair in the front of the class, sit down, and let the students talk. And I think good teachers got to recognize when it's time for you to sit down and let them talk peer to peer.
Now, are all groups talking in that, or is it just blacks? Or is everybody talking? And what happens if it get heated? How do you handle that?
I go in there, I deliberately get it heated. and because here's my thing, and I'll say this, Coach, the one thing my Republican friends have right, the college classroom has become overwhelmingly liberal, and I don't like that. I mean, I believe everybody should be able to voice their opinion.
Yes.
But, there was a time where, if you were against gay marriage, they would call you homophobic, all that kind of stuff. And I told my liberal students, you have to be comfortable in an environment where people are expressing views you disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes, Coach, I'll express the unpopular opinion just to get them riled up. Like that. But I tell them that the college classroom is the last place that we can have open and honest conversation around sensitive issues.
I like that. Doc, what have your experiences been in the dynamic between Black Americans and Africans that come from Africa? And how do you deal with that? What have you seen?
I'm glad you mentioned that. We talked about this in class yesterday. Texas, large African immigrant, largely from Nigeria, oil connection, all right? A lot of them in Houston, wow. Dallas, a lot of Ethiopian Somalians in Dallas, Nigerians in Houston. And so so you hear these attitudes, not much from the students anymore, but from the parents, right? Telling the students, don't hang with them. They don't value education. They're lazy. You're better than them. So I had a conversation with a guy. I said, so let's just to be clear, your parents came 6,000 miles away from home to get a job. They left their parents. They left all their siblings. They've missed weddings, funerals, celebrations. They did all that to get a job. If they are so smart, according to you, they're smart, right? If they're so smart, why couldn't they be successful at home? Here's the response, Coach. Corruption. The system. We can't get ahead. Now, this is from people, immigrants from Nigeria, immigrants from India. It's the same thing. The system can't get ahead. It's too corrupt. And what I say is, if you all acknowledge that the system you left was corrupt, why don't you show Black folks some grace when you get here?
Yes.
When we say the system has not been fair, you don't want to give us any grace. And that is one of the great hypocrisies. And I remind them, Coach, that most of the immigrants from Africa and Asia didn't come until the late 1960s when civil rights legislation was passed that opened up immigration laws. So not only are you here because of the Black struggle, but then when you get here, you disrespect the folk that have paved the way for you to come and have a life of prosperity.
Whew, man, Doc. And Doc, have you noticed the difference in your years of Southern Black students, not necessarily athletes, but Southern Black students and Black students that come from the North? Have you noticed any difference, or can you tell?
No, the difference that I see is, you got some students who are real corporate focused. I had one brother tell me, I said, "You gonna take my class?" He said, "Doc, I'm not into that Black-ish." That's what he told me. I'm not into that. I'm just trying to get a job. And I just shook my head and kept it moving. You know what I'm saying? But he has been told that that our history culture is not worthy of study.
Wow.
But now I got a lot of them corporate students in my class, and they say, "Doc, I needed this class in the middle of all them other classes because this is what will sustain me when I get to corporate America. Doc, I'm gonna pull out the notes to your class, I'm gonna pull out the syllabus, and I'm gonna pull out them books, because I tell the Black students, don't sell the books back."
Don't sell them back.
Yeah. Don't sell them back. No, that's your personal library. Don't sell them back.
Doc, when I came out of high school, I was a good basketball player, one of the top players, but I had to go to prep school because I was a Prop 48 back then, where you didn't qualify. And at that time, coming out, you had to, as an athlete, you had to get an 18. I got a 17, so I ended up going to prep school. Wow, what are your thoughts on standardized testing?
Well, it was funny. We were talking about that today, and the University of Texas integrated in 1956. And I tell students it's no coincidence that the year they were forced to integrate, that's the same year the university introduced standardized testing as an admissions requirement. And if you go and look back through some of the records of the Board of Regents, they explicitly state they came up with standardized testing to basically to come up with a way, right, to minimize African-American enrollment. Yes. So it has always been nothing more than a gatekeeping mechanism, Coach, always. It doesn't measure anything. I asked students the other day, so the SAT scale is what? 800 to 1600, 1600 being the best, okay? I asked them, what is the difference between somebody getting a 1540 and a 1480? Students said one or two questions. So we're making decisions about people's intelligence on a few questions, but yet and still, I remind people, man will never be able to design an instrument to determine what God has called somebody to do.
I agree with that. Doc, HBCU, now you're at the University of Texas. HBCU, PWI. Which one is better? Because right now with my daughter, we're looking at all options, and we're visiting both. What's the sell on? How do you make a decision?
I think it has to be. Let me say this. I told my kids the only thing I'm paying for is an HBCU. So one got a scholarship to North Texas, other one got a scholarship to Notre Dame, okay? In the case of my son, he wants to play football at the highest level, all right? And you can't take that away from him. But, he's going to play with an African-American coach, things like that. Here's the big difference. An HBCU will give you some time to ease into it.
Okay.
All right? I got students at Texas, Coach, who will email me a month before the semester starts wanting to know, can they get a copy of the syllabus? I'm like, man, I ain't even typed the syllabus up yet, all right? But here's the thing. So the reason I'm at a PWI, when I came out of Ohio State, I had a job offer from Clark Atlanta, but I hadn't finished my dissertation yet. So I waited a year to get on the job market. When I went back, the Clark job wasn't there anymore, and I went to LSU for an interview. And when I got on campus, there were about 3,000 Black students. That's bigger than most HBCUs.
Yes.
And at the time when I went on my interview, Coach, there may have been 8 Black professors. And I remember when I got there, we all went to lunch one day, and I said, we better not get in a car accident. It ain't gonna be no Black professors up there, all right? And so my thing is, Black students got a right to go wherever they wanna go. And there needs to be professors who look like them at those institutions. And so what I've tried to do is take the Jackson State model and bring it to a large PWI like LSU and the University of Texas. Took 82 students to Dubai last spring break. 80 of them were African-American. So we are intentional about connecting with Black students. Intentional. So it's all about, it's all about for one, I think there's a great diversity in HBCUs, so your daughter can find one that best fits her. Yeah.
I like that. And Doc, in my years of playing sports and coaching, I was always curious, more so than ever. We have a lot of great athletes at respective universities, even around the country, and mostly PWIs I'm talking about, talented guys, all-time greats, all of that. And they did a lot of phenomenal things for the university while playing. But then you look today, none of them are in administrative roles, professorships, or anything like that at the university. They're not in athletic directors, none of that. But they're on the sidelines and attending games, but they're not a part of the university, or no board of curators, no committees. Why is that?
Number one, I believe they didn't maximize their opportunity there. I'm gonna tell you what a guy at Notre Dame told my son. He said, Notre Dame will not take care of you. You get out of this what you put into it, all right? So number one, I think when we're there playing ball, we ain't thinking about nothing else, right? We just in the gym, going to workouts, training and treatment and all that kind of stuff. Number two, many former Black athletes, man, don't know how to exit the mascot role.
Yes. Explain
Meaning,
that, Doc.
You get your kicks off going to a tailgate and signing autographs. People patting you on the shoulder. People asking you about, man, what was that game like in 1993 when y'all played Michigan, right? They get their kicks off that. but they ain't got no career, they ain't got no money. And so I'm telling guys, man, you got to exit the mascot role. That's why black professors are so important. The black professor will say, Kwanzaa, man, you a communications major. You need to go join that communications club. You need to get this. I know you got to be here in the summer. You need to go to that Purdue radio station and get this internship in the summer. That is what black professors do. That's what we do. But what, Kwanzaa, you said something. The athletes don't even come back now. You know why? Because they not invited back. And the only ones who are invited back are the ones who have the ability to write a check. Or the ones who are a part of some national championship team. Let me tell you what I saw at Ohio State in my alma mater. They had, I forgot, maybe 2001 national championship team came back, or 2002, something like that. They had them. They came down, I believe, at the end of the first quarter, were on the field. The minute that recognition was over, I thought they were probably sitting, 50-yard line or something like that. No, bro. Let me tell you a case I heard of a spring game. This is a school in the Big Ten about 3 years ago. Two guys had just finished their eligibility in December, coach, all right? They try to go to the league. They don't make it. They get their degrees. They show up at the spring game in April. They try to get in. The lady taking the ticket says, I need your ticket. They said, we don't have a ticket. We played here for 4 years. She said, well, I can't let you in without a ticket. And then she said, what's your name? She said, I remember y'all. Can I take a picture with y'all? Took a picture with him. Still wouldn't let him in. Still wouldn't let him in for the spring game.
Wow.
Yes.
Doc, that hurts my soul.
Have you ever seen a former black college athlete put any kind of stuff on their car about where they went to school? You're not gonna see it.
No.
It's rare. You're not gonna see it.
But I will say this, Doc. I'm gonna say what I'm about to say, then I'm gonna ask you your advice. So when I was in college, and I think my college coach was a phenomenal man in my perspective as a young guy, and I thought they did everything for us to be successful as players. Assistant coaches, owners, about going to class, all those things. At least that's my perception, my young mind.
Yeah.
But I don't recall consistently nagging me about getting an internship. So what I'm saying is that I was in the gym all the time, doing what I'm supposed to do, trying to max out best I can in the classroom. But it wasn't a focus to internships, to go get this job over here in the summer. This will help you 10 years down the road with your career. So that wasn't talked about. And I'm not sure, maybe those were the times, so I want to be respectful here. So what I'm saying to you, if you've seen it for so long, what do you say to an 18, 19-year-old young man that's going into college that doesn't know those things, and he might have a coach that don't provide those things? How did he know? Because you don't know if you don't know.
Coach, it's hard. And most coaches only do what the coaches before them have done. But what I tell coaches, I spoke at the Final Four a couple of years ago to a bunch of Division I coaches, and I said, tell me what you make the kids do that you don't benefit from. You benefit from the workouts. You benefit from the getting extra shots up. What do you do that you don't benefit from? And they really couldn't name anything. And so we've been, through our Black Student Athletes Summit, we've been trying to educate coaches on, coach, you control the one thing, the currency for a D1 ball player is playing time.
Yes.
Coach, if you tell all those young men or young women, for you to get on that court, you're going to have to show me a resume. And coach, I know if you just say that, they're going to have a resume.
Yes.
And if we're honest, talking about basketball, coach, a D1 coach at any Power 5 school can call up 12 boosters in 10 minutes.
Yes.
Hey, man, I need you to get this young man an internship. Done. So it's not hard, but it calls for a pivot, because coaches, I tell coaches all the time, at a certain point, it's diminishing returns. All the practicing and all the workouts, it's diminishing returns.
Yes. Doc, you started the Black Student Athlete Summit, and you've done a phenomenal job with that, man. That thing, you had over 1,000 students last year. Now, what made you start that?
So initially, so what happened, so in 2004, 2005, the New York Times did a story on me about my work with Black athletes at LSU and how I kind of changed the culture as a faculty perspective, right? It was an outlaw dumb jock culture, how we changed it. So when that article hit, I became pretty popular. And I would have athletic directors call me, undercover, Dr. Moore, can you help us out? I'm like, what's going on? Well, the young men are showing up with the hairstyles and the gold teeth, and our fans don't like it.
Wow.
And so I knew there was a need, twofold. There was a need to help educate athletic departments, but I also knew there was a need to help educate student athletes. And I like to give this example. Let's look at that point guard from Alabama I talked about, the little sister, who's been popular since 6th grade. Even if she leaves Alabama with a degree, she can't go get a job at Best Buy and be happy with that because it don't fit with her profile.
That's right.
She'd be better off getting a job with the New Orleans Pelicans making $20,000 a year and moving up. And so that's what we try to do at the summit. It's not about just getting a degree or getting a job. It's helping them transition out well. Coach, real quick story. I was invited by the NFL Players Association to go speak to 100 former ball players, all right? We're in Indianapolis. Now, I knew why they were there. They didn't know why I was there. So the night before, they set up a little happy hour thing. Coach, these brothers in there won't speak to me. They mean mugging. I'm like, man, I'm 45 years old, all right? I'm like, dude, we playing this game? But I knew why they were there. So the next morning, I had all 100 of them in a session for 90 minutes. Then 10 minutes, coach. Brother started tearing up. Talking about how they were broken. Divorced, no money. One guy said, man, Dr. Moore, the best job I can get is paying $18 an hour. That's what, and these men are husbands and fathers, coach.
And nobody can help them now.
And so for me, man, it's like, what you say?
And nobody can help them now.
Nobody can help them. And I said, well, hold on a minute. The Players Association has a whole bunch of continuing ed programs at these business schools. Y'all didn't take advantage of none of that? He said, one guy said, Dr. Moore, if you start participating in those programs, then you're telling yourself your career is over. Well, your career is going to be over at some point.
Yes.
But we got guys at 25, 26, 27, 28, man, America has no value for the former athlete who doesn't have a skill. Ricky Williams told me this story. He tried to go buy some property in Australia. And he said, in Australia, to buy property, you got to be a citizen. To become a citizen, you got to be bringing a skill into the country. He said they gave him a piece of paper with all the skills on it. He said, damn, I ain't got none of these skills. Came back to Texas to get his degree.
Wow. Had to get a skill.
Yeah. Had to get a skill, yes.
And Doc, what do you think? Because again, a lot of states are doing away with African American studies, Black history in high schools, in communities. Do you think we should start, what age group or what level you think we should start teaching, whether you call it African American history, Black history in schools?
Out the womb. And let me say this. Yes, some of the legislation is problematic, but we can teach it at churches. We can teach it through our Black Greek organizations. We don't have to rely upon the school system to teach us our history because they probably ain't going to teach it right anyway.
Yes, that's true. But Doc, isn't it just as important for white students and Asian students to understand Black history because we're all in the country together?
Absolutely. But until we can get to that point where it becomes more widely accepted, we need to start at home.
Okay.
We need to start at home. And I told every African-American family, pull your family together and we'll start and watch Roots. We're going back to 1977.
Doc, the importance of Black people building their own institutions, what does that mean?
Let's look at some of these 1960s luminaries. MLK had the Black Church and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Malcolm X had the Nation of Islam. Fannie Lou Hamer had the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Ella Baker had the NAACP. Angela Davis had the Black Panther Party. So no matter how dynamic these people were, Coach, Marcus Garvey had the Universal Negro Improvement Association. No matter how dynamic they were, there was an institution supporting them. And the reason an institution is so important, the institution outlives the individual.
Yes.
And we as Black folk have become too celebrity driven. And so one reason we started the summit, and you won't see my picture anywhere on the website, is because my thing is, how can we create something that will be here, that will be sustained, right? As I get older. But to me, man, it's all about how many people say, how many followers I got. Man, I don't care about that. Here's how jacked up we are, Coach. Most of our people got more excited about a Cat Williams interview.
Sad, isn't it?
Yeah. We will get all excited about that. But what about building our community? Because my thing is this, you can blame the white man all day. And I got to agree with, Clarence Thomas said something I agree with. He said, man, y'all talk like it's 1890 out here. He said, and so at some point, we got to stop talking about the white man, stop talking about Trump and politics, and go back to what our brothers and sisters did right after the Civil War. With no money, no education, they built houses, communities, churches, schools. All 9 Black fraternities and sororities created during Jim Crow. 117 HBCUs were created during Jim Crow. This the same time while people being lynched, can't vote, all of that. But you still have an unprecedented amount of institution building.
Yes.
Pretty much every Black professional association, physicians, lawyers, pharmacists, all that created during that period. So we got it in us.
I like that. So, Doc, do you think Black history and teaching in the month of February, is that important?
Man, we should teach it and live it all day. I mean, all year. And absolutely, February is the month. We emphasize it, and I remind people, it's American history. I remind people of that. You know, let's not separate it. It is a part of American history. But we can't let them talk about it like it's an add-on.
Yes.
Well, I said, you can't separate us from the history. You can't.
Doc, my last question, because we can go on all night, and this is one, because just reading and studying you, you appear to be a powerful man. But how does it feel, your teaching, your style, your philosophy, your beliefs, and then your peers, how do they respond to you when you have meetings, committee meetings, staff meetings on campus? How do your peers respond to you in those settings?
Well, I'll tell you this, Kwanzo, my parents weren't perfect, but I think they did the one thing that's required of every parent. After introducing kids to God, I think the number one thing a parent should do is raise your children with healthy self-esteem. And my parents did that for me. I don't need any outside affirmation. I don't need a pat on the back. I've been the same person since 26 years as a professor, and the biggest compliment I ever gotten, man, was somebody said, Dr. Moore, no matter what environment you in, you're going to be the same person. And what I have found is I got to be true to how God made me.
Yes.
And I tell people all the time, people like Clarence Thomas I don't get disappointed at them because I don't expect anything from them.
Mm-hmm.
What disappoints me is when people say one thing, but then you going behind the scenes and doing something else. And so for me, it has always been, all my cards are always on the table. You always know what I'm thinking. And I just try to be consistent to how God made me. And here's the thing that keeps me in check, Coach. And a dude told me this. He said, Leonard, as long as you remain that dude with the 1.6 GPA, you're going to be dynamic.
I like that.
When you forget about that dude and you try to become Leonard with the PhD at 26, you're not going to be any good to us. So I'm the 1.6 guy.
Yes.
And I've always been that way. And it's worked for me.
I like that. This has been phenomenal, and we will continue to do this, Doc. And I got to get down there to the class session. I want to be a part of that. But yeah. Your book, just want to make sure, teaching Black history to white people, but also, Doc, half the people here, there's so many people know you already. But how do you want people to get in touch with you? What are your email address? How do you want them to reach you?
Yeah, they can just go to University of Texas website, give my email address. I'm old school.
Okay, I like that.
I'm an old school dude. Yeah,
that's the best way.
Just email me. I prefer that kind of communication. But thank you for having me, brother. And like I said, brother, I've been a fan from afar. From afar. Let me ask you a question, Coach.
Yes.
Real quick, okay?
Yeah.
Best team you ever played against, Illinois or Michigan?
The best team I ever played against.
All right.
high school or college?
You got to Purdue in 92?
Yeah, so I got there 91, 92 was my first year, yes.
Okay, did you play against
Fab Five?
Illinois teams, Bardo, Kendall Gill and them?
I'll tell you a story about Kendall Gill and those guys. So going into my freshman year, those guys were leaving, but when I went on my official visit to Illinois, Kendall Gill and Steve Bardo were my host. And those guys were great, man. They had great teams, man. And really, for me, that's where I was going to school. I was going to Illinois till they got in some trouble in '89. If you remember the Deion Thomas situation, they got in some trouble there. So I opened up my recruiting, and then it came down to Purdue and Connecticut, and Purdue was the best fit for me.
Okay.
And you asked me the best teams I ever played against in college?
Yep.
Oh, man, it was so many. I mean, because, Big Ten was so physical and so tough, and you had the Fab Five. I think I would say the best team was the Indiana team when Calvert Chaney was a senior. Calvert Chaney, Pat Graham, Damon Bailey, Allen Henderson. I mean, man, they were already talented. They were talented. They had a phenomenal coach. Coach Bob Knight, may rest in peace, was a phenomenal coach. Right. They had a great atmosphere. They had great talent, and they were one of those teams. They were probably one of the few teams in all of college basketball. Sometimes you can leave off one or two guys. You don't really have to guard them. You have to guard all five guys, and they were constantly moving. So they were very tough to guard. And I thought, in my opinion, outside of going against my college roommate, teammate Glenn Robinson, I felt like Calvert Chaney was probably the toughest matchup all the time because he can shoot it, score it, post up, make plays, and they screen for him. So, but Indiana was probably the toughest team, I would say.
Y'all play Fab Five? What up, Fab Five?
Fab Five, yeah, we all came in together. Again, they were so talented. But again, they came in as freshmen. They were extremely talented. They did a great job, but they started jail as the season went on, and then the next year so back-to-back Final Four. So they had all the talent, and they had great bench play. I mean, again, everybody talks about the 5-5, and they were great. But they also had a guy like Eric Riley who came off the bench, and he was a first-round draft pick. So they had a lot of talent, man. But they did a great job playing well together, man. I thought, Jalen Rose as a point guard did a phenomenal job at 6'8". Because, again, sometimes you say a guy is a point guard, you think you say 6'8", well, he's probably really 6'5", 6'6". No, he was actually 6'8". So you talking about a guy that size. They starting five with 6'8", 6'6", 6'7", 6'10", 6'11". I mean, and they were talented, and they did a great job of playing well with each other. But a great group of guys, and I'm so happy to see those guys back together again because they deserve. Yes.
Last question. So I was at Purdue a couple years ago doing some work in the athletic department. All right. So the Purdue men's team had a game that night. All right. And so game thing started like 7:30, 8 o'clock, something like that. I'm in my boy's office, coach, that's connected to the arena. All right.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing it, and it's like an hour before the game, hour before the game starts. And I'm hearing this noise. I'm like, man, where that noise coming from? He said, oh man, people in the arena already. I said, the game don't start till for another hour or so. Coach, we walk in that arena. An hour before it started, every seat was full. It's always been like that?
Yeah, they built a great, Coach Katie did a phenomenal job, and Matt Painter has continued that. Yeah. So they, and it's one of those deals where it's all family, so to speak, even though there's new faces. I mean, the tradition has done a tremendous job of maintaining, and Matt Painter has continued what Coach Katie started and taking it to a whole nother level. So, man, it's just great, man. But they're fans, they have a passion for it. I mean, snow, ice, it doesn't matter. We're finding a way to get to that game. And but they have a great product on the floor as well.
Right. Well, Coach, thank you, brother. I appreciate this. It's been fun.
Thank you, Doc. It all counts family. We've had a great day. Dr. Leonard Moore, phenomenal teacher and leader of men and women. Let's make sure we like, share, and subscribe. And remember, it all counts. Take care.